You ready, Yale?
I need to tell them about the door prize.
Okay, get after it. You can have the whole rest of the time if you want.
No.
How long do you want me to talk?
7 or 8:30.
Okay, so set it for 1 hour or a little shorter. I'll set it for 50.
Probably a little shorter
All right.
for questions.
Yep, I'll do 50.
There you go. Let's turn that on, make sure it's working.
Testing, testing. Better? Think so.
There we go.
All right, thank you, sir.
Okay, everybody, let's make our way back to our seats.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, y'all ready to get started again? I do have one thing to tell you that's kind of a surprise. We do have 2 door prizes. Unfortunately, they're not Dr. Grandsford.
Gr-
They're Doug Collins. You may have heard of them. So that's going to be the door prize. So when Dr. Grant gets done, I need you to stay in your seat just a second, and we will take a couple of numbers and
Nope. Just seeing what slide I was on there. Thanks.
number the sign-in sheet after you sign. Nobody sees it. All right, thank you. Ready?
Where's the sign-in sheet?
Y'all already signed in when you got here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right, me again. And so, even though I know most people can't burn, you just got to realize we have to find some way to mimic that, because for about the last 10,000 or so years or more, that's what it's done. And not only did natural fires occur because it all has to do with lightning strikes. So the 2 states with the most lightning strikes are Florida and Texas. And so you get lightning strikes, and you have plants that evolve with fire, and you got pine needles. If you have grasses, you're going to have fire. So that's why we got to be really careful about eliminating all fire, because the longer you wait, the worse the fire is. The more, and I burn every single year, partly because of safety, because I'm out in the middle of the country, 15 miles from 3 different volunteer fire departments in an old 100-year-old pine house that will burn down. And so partly because of safety and partly because I like flowers. All right. And so, as I said, if you can't burn, you can mow. If it's a small bed, if it's a small pocket prairie, it's really best after you cut it, and you can cut it down with a weed eater, with a lawnmower, with a tractor, with whatever you got. It's really best if you take everything you cut down and take it out of there, literally rake it out of there, because what fire does is it disintegrated and burned up all that material, turned it into fertilizer and lime and nutrients, but it also exposed bare mineral soil. So all the seeds germinated, just like if you have a bare dirt garden, it's going to all pop up with weeds. Well, in this case, it all pops up with the things that are supposed to be growing there. And so when you have all that vegetation that you cut down laying there, like a hayfield that's just been mowed, it's literally mulched itself, and those seeds, just like you don't have reseeding annuals come up in a bed with mulch, you don't have wildflower seed come up if it's all covered with grass. And so certainly you're not going to get out there and rake acres of grass up, but if you have a small bed, when you cut it down, take all that material out of there, expose as much bare dirt as you can, and then take everything that you cut down and scatter it someplace else. If you've got another place that you want to have wildflowers, you've got a roadside, or you've got a pasture, you've got a power line running through, any place that you have a chance to grow. So I am literally Johnny Appleseed, collecting seed and sprinkling seed every day, every walk. And it's kind of fun. If you do that enough, then and you get old enough, you're like, I did that. I planted that. I've got dogwood trees that after scattering thousands of dogwood berries, I've got 10 or 12 seeds. But that's the way nature did it. And so nature puts out lots of plants. Think about a tree in the woods. Here's the mother tree. It scatters thousands of babies every year, starves them all to death, and the babies are just chanting for their mother to die, and it never happens. And finally that tree goes down, and two of those three seedlings get to live. And so that's the way nature does it. Lots and lots of plants coming up. And so if you can rake up that material, it's good. Certainly I don't do it on the areas that I mow. If I could, I would, but it's not enough of me to get that done. And so I have some, that first of them was the first pocket prairie I did. This is the latest pocket prairie I've done. And so I literally divide up some properties. The question was, when do I cut it back? And so, or in the case of when would you burn? Well, nature mostly burned in the summertime, headed into fall. We get the fronts come through and lightning strike. Well, that's super dangerous for one individual like me burning out in the middle of the country. And so I don't do growing season summertime burns. If I have something that I need to take the place of a summer burn, I mow it because I'm not comfortable enough doing those burns. In this particular case, on the left, you can see where I keep it. I mow it one time during the summer. On the right, I literally burn that. And so, your choice is to either cut it back or burn it during the middle of the summer, which for me would be cutting it back, or cut it back or burn it late winter, early spring. And so one of those caters to spring flowers, one of those caters to summer and fall flowers. And so this particular case, I literally get different flowers blooming on either side. And in everything I do, I'll make me walking paths through there because you're not going to get people to appreciate something unless they get out and experience. And that's what we have to do. We've trained the world now, if you don't mow your property, then they're going to call the city and say, she's either defiant or dead in there, go do something about that property. So we've got to find ways to make it, one, we've got to educate people more, we've got to make it look more palatable, signage, frames, fencing, trails, things like that. And if we can't teach Texans to appreciate wildflowers, then we all make an F because we are the wildflower state. So here's, of course, one reason I do late winter burns is because the whole world is green and you can't burn anything up unless it's got grass and pine needles there. So I burn it the safest time of year. And of course, it looks ugly when it happens, but then it's amazing what happens after that. If you're going to do any kind of pocket prairie, any kind of natural restoration, you have to know what a lot of gardeners these days don't know, what seedlings look like. Everybody knows what a bedding plant in full bloom looks like because you buy it already blooming, pretty much finished. And so when you grow plants, you got to know what babies look like. And baby plants don't look like adult plants, no more than baby kids look like adult people. And so I'm really surprised how many people don't know what seedlings look like. And there'll be people mowing, stomping, mulching, killing, spraying, tons of little baby wildflowers that they don't realize that that's the plant that they're trying to grow. So in that particular case, you got Rudbeckias and Bidens all coming up there. And so there's those same things blooming later in the summertime. Now, one thing, if you have a choice, now, certainly in the middle of Texas, you've got good options for buying commercial wildflower seed that's adapted. We don't in the eastern part of the state. And even the places that I do order seed from, so that yellow flower blooming there is Biden's Aristosa, tick seed Biden's. Well, the wild version around us blooms in the fall, late fall. And so I ordered this from Kentucky, and it just shows you how plants from different parts of the country, even though they're the exact same species, it blooms in the middle of the summertime. Exact species from a different part of the country blooms at an entirely different time, and it's literally dead by the time the monarchs are coming through. Still pretty, but it just shows you we literally need to save what we have where we are because it's different from any place else on the planet, even if it's the exact same species. I also want you to notice something. I love pine trees, and in the back you'll see a pine savanna I'm working on. But on the right you'll see a post oak tree, and so y'all got post oaks here, and of course the post oak savanna. We don't have these real distinct lines of ecoregions in Texas. So even though you have a blackland prairie and a post oak savanna and piney woods, there's not just a straight line running through there. And sometimes you'll drive in areas like between College Station and Crockett, and it may look like a straight line, but then you see way over there in Bastrop, you've got some pines. But way over with me, you've got post oaks. I grew up with post oaks in the yard in Longview. Smith County, where I work, is basically 2/3 post oak savanna. And even my place there, I noticed my whole life, I'm looking around for all the short-leaf pine, which should have been there. There's not much of it. So really, I was in a pine, oak, hickory savanna, and I feel really guilty because over my lifetime, I look at old pictures from around there, it was open, spaced out post oaks and grasses beneath, and now it's thickets of woods. And in my woods, the post oaks that are left out there have literally choked to death with no sunlight. And so we hear this a lot, what's happening to the post oaks? What happened to the post oaks? They evolved with fire and bunch grasses and sunlight, and now we have, you look at College Station and areas where you got lawns, you got pastures, running grasses, no fire. If you don't have bare dirt, you don't have post oak seedlings. And the reason post oaks have thick, corky bark is because they had regular fire. So something as simple as changing the grass and changing the fire regime. And so, but yet, here's the guy that's supposed to know what to do, and I've almost gone my entire lifetime and let all the post oaks on my property die off. Because literally they needed fire, or at least thinning, lots of thinning. They were supposed to be way spaced out. And I thought, being a little kid from the 60s, oh my gosh, you just don't cut the woods, it'll all grow up and you'll have this perfect planet with great big forest and whatnot. It's not like that. The whole southeastern United States was open woodlands with prairies beneath them. Central Texas, bless you. Central Texas was post oaks with prairies beneath them. West Texas was just prairies with some scattered trees out there. So unless you had ravines or valleys or gullies, and so we've completely altered what we have. So I was mostly post oaks, and as much as I love trees, and people get mad at me all the time for cutting down trees, I told up the other day that I'd literally planted, I think, 55,000 trees, and so when people see me cutting a tree down, they get upset. Well, there's a white oak that I planted in the middle of my small little pocket prairie there that has to have sunlight, and so planting a tree that's going to get 70 feet tall and 50 feet wide, there will be no flowers. So, for people like me to just plant, and gardeners are really bad about that. Almost every landscape ends up being shady because we can't stop planting stuff. And so I took out 2 oak trees, and way in the back there's a red maple that's going to be on the chopping block. And of course, being a kid from the country where people kill and eat animals, and being a person from nature that knows plants are, die and live all the time, it's not that big a deal to me, no more than thinning out a crop. But if I left those trees in my little pocket prairie there, when I'm dead and gone, it would be right back to shaded woods and no grasses. And so, since I'm the only one that can have the gumption to do that, even the dogs are appalled. And so I am gradually trying to take my little piece there, which is an eastern extension of the post oak savanna, post oak and shortleaf pine. And so just in a few years' time, that was the old community picnic grounds on the property. And the community literally died on the vine there, and they quit hosting the annual homecomings. So I stopped mowing it. I'd mowed it for 25 years, every month, to keep it a mowed lawn, and then had some shade trees out there. All post oaks. There used to be a dozen post oaks out there. Now there's 1 left. And so, but look how fast things come back. I say fast, 10 years time, that's fast. As I said, it took 10,000 years to make. So I didn't plant that late boneset. I didn't plant that agalanus. I didn't plant that goldenrod. I didn't plant that broom sedge blue stem. And so the good thing is there's something called the seed bank where we're not too far gone to save things. The seed are still there. The little remnants are still there along fence rows and along power line right-of-ways. But there's so few that there's no doubt that if we go another couple of generations, we'll lose all those plant materials. We'll lose all those things that are in decline. And so I took this picture just last week. And so there's a plant I didn't plant. That's Eupatorium serotinum. That's the variegated fritillary butterfly. That's the gray hair streak. That's the Pearl crescent, thank you. And so I love, we have hundreds of butterflies. Most people can't tell them. You get your eye naturalist, you can identify, and there's a little skipper down there too. And so it's just amazing. Here's a plant that's not super showy. It's fragrant. You can smell it in bloom. But nature was not all about showy. Every one of those butterflies uses a different flower. Every bee uses a different flower. Every flower hosts a different caterpillar. And so it doesn't matter whether it's your favorite color or you bought it or somebody gave it to you or it's the right combination. It takes all of those pieces to make the puzzle. So what I'm literally trying to do is 2 things. I'm trying to recreate the pine savannas that we had in the southeast. So you drive across the southeast now, you don't see this, but this is what people would have seen when settlers got here, except the pine trees would have been even bigger. So there were prairies underneath pine forests, and those pine needles and those grasses literally burned every 1 to 2 years and kept them in the pine savannas. And then all through central Texas and parts of East Texas, you had the post oak savanna, same thing, big corky bark post oak trees with prairies beneath them. And so every part of Texas was some form of a prairie, and we've got to find some way to mimic those in our landscapes. And so we've got to learn our native grasses. We all learn our long grasses. We got grass from China, grass from Japan, we got grass from Africa. There aren't any native long grasses, but even our pasture grasses, no pasture person, no cow person plants any native grasses. You got Bermuda from Africa, you got Bahia from South America, you got Johnson grass from South America. So we've got to learn what our prairie grasses are. They were clump grasses. All the native grasses grew in a clump. All of our pasture grasses and our long grasses we introduced because they spread. The problem is they spread and make a tight covering on the ground, and so a baby quail and a baby turkey evolved to run around on bare dirt between clumps of grass. And so we thought we were doing a good thing by introducing these really aggressive grasses because it made more hay and more forage, but we changed the ground floor structure that not only the birds needed, but of course the insects that fed on those same grasses and the birds that use those seeds. So who knows which grass that is? Yeah, bushy blue stem, kind of pretty in the wintertime. That's broom sedge blue stem, which all my life in agriculture they teach you. That's a sign that you've abandoned your farm, you're not fertilizing, you didn't mow, you didn't weed, your cows are going to starve to death. What it really means is nature is coming back, and if you'll just leave it alone another 10 years, you'll have a lot of other cool stuff out there with it. So it's just amazing what we've taught people. We literally, I remember the part about beating it in submission. If it starts to return like it's supposed to be, we do anything we can to stop that. And so this used to be, I used to have an heirloom bulb farm that was there. Before that, I grew sugar cane there. And then for the last 10 years, I've done nothing except burn it once a year. And so, everybody has a choice. So my grandparents lived there. My grandmother's grandparents lived there. So I'm going to be the first person that ever came along that said, look, I want to reset the clock back before any of you people got here. So every relative I've ever had, like, what could we squeeze out of the property? What penny could we make? What could we grow? What could we feed? What could we eat? And I'm going to go back to nature. Basically what they call rewilding. And so we have a huge issue, and that's sunshine. You can't have prairie grasses, you can't have wildflowers if you don't have sunshine. So if you have closed canopy forest, if you have brush, if you have invasive species, you have woody plants, you have cedar trees, then you're not going to have sunshine. If you have a shady yard, it's going to be pretty, and you can grow azaleas and camellias and gardenias and stuff like that, but you're not going to be able to grow prairie plants because prairie plants didn't grow in the shade. And so you got to have lots of sun. And that's why fire kept all those things back into prairies, because it beat down the trees and shrubs. You got to realize that we're a nation of neat freaks, and people will shame you if you let something get a little unruly looking. But you got to realize there's no such thing as a lawnmower or a weed eater or it was all nature. And so nature is it's not always neat, but it's always natural. And so we got to value that. And so it's not right for us to come here from another continent and start rechanging the rules that all those plants and animals live by for tens of thousands, if not millions of years. And so there's nothing wrong with being things a little unkept looking. And I'm got Scottish roots, so I always tell my wife I'm like a white trash cottage gardener, and she's like French Cajun, so she wants clipped evergreen. She doesn't want any flower hanging over. She doesn't even let the stuff bloom before she trims it off. And I'm like, there's nothing wrong with, and of course, certainly if you're going to do a true, natural, native plant pocket prairie, you want those things. It's like me. I always hated going to a zoo because I knew that thing was not made to be in that cage. And so if you're going to grow wild plants, we need to let them run wild. And so who am I? And we criticize people's landscapes all the time. Ugly, pretty, they need to mow, they need to cut that down. But you know what we don't do? We don't drive down the roadside in Texas and say, bad combination, Mother Nature messed that up, too many bluebonnets, not enough. And so if we'll just learn to do that in our landscapes with natural plants, because we literally draw a distinction, but the problem is we're running out of nature and there's nothing left to admire. And so it's okay to let that stuff grow 1 year. Now, if it's invasive, take it out. If it's not native, take it out. But if it flops over, fine. If it's dry and it dries up, fine. Something's always likes it better. Because every year it's either too hot, too dry, too wet, or too cold. Well, that's what nature is. Some plants always going to like it better. Some seedlings going to be more adapted. And so all of my pocket prairies look entirely different every year. As a gardener, what do you want to do? Turn on the sprinkler, get out the insecticide, get out the fertilizer. You got to make it look exactly the same every year. It's not supposed to look the same every year. And the problem is we're getting down to, as I mentioned, these little tiny remnants. And so this is a really cool Unothera that grows on the roadside there on 259 that I buy every day. Don't see it anyplace else, but yet it would have existed by the exponential thousands of acres on the sandy soils before we got here. And so they don't grow in, they're not in a cow pasture, they're not in a pine forest, they're not on a roadside, they're not in a lawn. And so all these things that used to exist, literally a monarch would have flown from Canada to Mexico on a yellow brick road of flowers. And now you can literally count on one hand in my 1.5 hour drive the flowers that are blooming in the fall. So lots of cool things you'll see in these tiny little strips, tiny little pieces, tiny little angles next to driveways, next to fences, next to fence rows. We've got to find some way to save those things. We're not going to change the way the highway department looks after it. You're not going to take a cattle rancher like my dad and tell him to grow flowers. But we got to do something. We got to find somebody that's willing to do something, or all those things are going to disappear. Rexia, there's one patch in 3 counties that I know of. So all these things that should be out there by the trillions and millions, I know of in single patches. And every year I'll go to photograph some single patch that I'd seen before, and it's gone, and then that's gone, and then that's gone. And so the diversity literally is disappearing. This is in Washington County, Texas, known for its wildflowers. That's Maximilian sunflower, which before people got here would have been to the horizon. And now we got these tiny little strips around the fence row where the pasture owner hadn't killed it and the mower hadn't taken it out. And so if you're a master naturalist, if you're a master gardener that likes to grow stuff, you need to learn how to collect local germplasm, local wild plants. So every year I'm hopping out on the roadside, every place I've admired some little place. And so instead of letting it disappear like I did earlier in life, I go and collect seed, and then I take those seed like a Johnny Appleseed or like Noah's Ark, and I take it to my little pocket prairies, and I put, instead of seed that I've ordered from all over the place, I literally get seed from as close to my spot as can be, and I'll put on the bag either upland or dry land or sandy. So I'll put it in a spot like where it came from. So you don't take something from Sandy Hill and put it in a wet area, or something from a bottomland and put it on your hill. But I've got enough places that I can literally set it free where it needs to be. And so it's not original, it's not completely natural, but it's something, and at least it's local germplasm, because Dr. J.C. Ralston at North Carolina State was one of our most famous horticulturists, and he always said that there'd be a time when we'd go to Europe to see all the biggest, finest examples of Native American trees, because they cherished them so much over there, and they've been growing there for so long. Well, the problem is we don't have that kind of thing. You don't go to Europe to see American prairies, and so once these flowers disappear, they're gone, along with the birds and the bees and the butterflies. And then you got a lot of people try, but they don't know what they're doing. So here's somebody talk to the power line people into letting them plant sunflowers. And so great plant for pollinators, great plant for birds. But that's black oil sunflower seed that you buy at Tractor Supply or Lowe's. It's 1,000 years removed from a wild sunflower. So you got a little bit of nothing out there. A wild Helianthus annuus gets 6 feet tall, makes 100 flowers on it, little bitty flowers, little bitty seed. And so that was somebody's man-made thing to support nature. And this is across the street. So if you just left it like it was, you had all sorts of amazing stuff instead of going and buying fancy sunflower seed that, yes, technically a native species, but not the wild version, and didn't last and didn't reseed and it's back like it was before. And then that's getting mowed and sprayed with herbicides. So we've got to learn to appreciate what we have and learn how to perpetuate and propagate what we do have. And of course, America is in love with lawns. And I worked at the turfgrass lab at Texas A&M and the turfgrass lab at LSU. And I like to mow because it's noisy and it's dangerous and nobody can chase me down and bother me and boss me around and ask me questions. But yet we can't have an entire nation of mowed lawns. And people come here from from other parts of the world, and they thought, what is the obsession with big houses and big lawns that you just mowing grass? Because those are basically biological deserts, so you don't have birds, bees, butterflies. You got a nice little clipped lawn, but I mean, it's just like rolling a rug out in your landscape. Oh, sorry about that. It is the opposite of a dessert. I see that. If Greg would run this through a spell check, he would catch that. And so there are places in the United States that do a good job of showing how to use native plants. But right now, you look at any place, including I jumped out and photographed around the courthouse when I was there earlier here, and said we all basically do the same thing, the same plants, the same stuff. All over the United States, we just do it. The further west you go in Texas, you just do a crappier job of it because you got the wrong soil and the wrong water. And so it's, and the wrong climate. And so if we take the plants that belong here and learn how to do something artistic like the Highline in New York, Lurie Gardens in Chicago, and so those are using native prairie plants in urban settings that are ornamental using sort of a prairie ethos. There's the gardens at Texas A&M University. Not all of it looks like that, but one of the cool things when they dedicated this garden, I was the horticultural consultant early on, and it's going to keep growing each year. But when they had the dedication, for any of you that went to UT, and by the way, SFA is part of the UT system now, so I can talk out both sides of my mouth. But the fairly young couple that paid the $30 million to develop the garden was sitting there with another check to do the next phase of it. And the coolest thing they said was, when the gardens at Texas A&M University are finished, it will be larger than the University of Texas campus. So our garden will be bigger than your entire school. Like, that sounded kind of cool. And so anyway, that's just an example using native Texas wildflowers. I gave a talk in Galveston a couple of years ago. This was a city cemetery. Is that cool? Because most cemeteries beat them into submission till you have just mowed lawn. And lots of them literally have signs banning living plants. People can be dead, but the plants can't be live. So I thought that was cool. This is SFA University in Nacogdoches, Texas, thanks to a professor named Dr. Jared Barnes, using native southeastern plants. Little Pocket Prairie I did at the SFA Piney Woods Native Plant Center years ago. So it can be a small area, it can be a little patch, it can be a whiskey barrel, it can be a strip. People doing little health strips now. It's really hard to keep a tiny strip of turf mowed and watered and maintained and free of chinch bugs and that sort of thing. So to me, we need to make sure that cities and homeowners associations allow people to grow native plants that belong there. Now, here's a lady in Tyler, Texas, that has as pristine as a lawn as you'll ever see. She was an interior designer that moved back home. Just incredible, beautiful lawn and landscape. But it's in the part of Smith County that's post oak savanna. So literally, it originally was post oak trees and prairies under there. Well, she's decided that she wants to literally do a pocket prairie on the property. So she looking at the front of the house, you think this is the last person that's going to do a pocket prairie. And so she called me out there for help. And because it looks like a total disaster right now. She has these tiers going down to the road. The good thing is people driving on the street can't really see this right here. And of course, she ordered a bunch of seed. My friend Don Stover with NRCS said, you're too late to plant the seed, but you went ahead and planted it. This year looks like a mess. Well, you know what? I told her, all of mine looked like a mess the first year. And that's just what happens. And she called and said, well, it's full of Bahia grass. And so I came out there and looked, well, it's all crabgrass. And crabgrass is a European species, but it's an annual. It's what we call a ruderal species. And there's scatterings of native grasses, scatterings of native plants. So I've assured her, I said, you're going to wait. And of course, she can hire anybody to do whatever she needs to it. So they're going to come mow it down at the right time. I said, each year we're going to keep reseeding stuff. And I pick her some seed and bring it there. And she's very dedicated, even though it looks like a disaster right now. I've assured her that it won't always look like a disaster. And she has a little piece on that same tier there that is post oaks and some native plants and some native wildflowers and shrubs. And so I really love watching something go from nothing to something because somebody is stubborn enough and persistent enough. In this case, she's not going to quit. But she's also not going to fake it and make it look like, you can order a bunch of non-native wildflower seed from Wild Seed and make, remember how Plano where somebody did there for a while, where they're, it look like wildflowers. They're not really wildflowers, and so they do that in the southeast with cosmos, and so those really aren't prairie type wildflower plantings. So she's not going to fake it. She's going to keep at it, and so we'll stay tuned, and one day I'll show you pretty pictures of that. Also, you've got this Josie Ranch Pocket Prairie here, and so for those of you that hadn't seen it, you need to go see it. It's not huge, but it's a prime example of what people can do when they know what they're doing and they set their mind to it. And we got to show people more examples, and we've got to show them that it's okay. Now, you don't, people say like, well, I can't do my whole yard like that, or like, I wouldn't dare do my whole. Well, no, you don't need to do your whole yard. Do something like that. We've got to gradually train people to do more and more like that. We got tons of vacant lots. We got tons of people that own ranches and weekend homes and stuff that are mowing them to within an inch of their life. And so we've got to find some way to preserve these plants. So we need more examples like this to show people what to do. And places to preserve those plants, because you know what? All the places that I collect seed from keep disappearing. And so now I have to go to the places that I've planted, that I collected seed from someplace I planted there, because it doesn't exist in the wild anymore. So that's a cool one. So a few little rules about getting started. The question is always, do I kill off everything and start with bare dirt? Well, it depends on what you have. So you need somebody that knows plants, a wildlife biologist or a good horticulturist or an experienced master naturalist, to say, look, you've got native grasses here, you've got some native wildflowers. And so you decide, do I have a scattering of good stuff? Do I have nothing and it's all invasive things? And yeah, you start over with nothing. Do you have good native grasses but no wildflowers? Do you have good native wildflowers and perennials but no grasses? So there's a herbicide that'll kill everything. There's a herbicide that'll kill broadleaves. There's a herbicide that'll kill grasses. So early on, just like doing surgery to save somebody, you have to take some drastic measures to get it going. Question is, do you till it up or not? Generally, you don't. If you till, you get erosion. If you till, you expose a lot of, oftentimes, invasive seed, but sometimes it may just be a total wreck, and you do till it. Generally, I don't, but you need somebody to look and help you determine that.
What if you're starting with a Bermuda lawn?
Question is, what if you're starting with a Bermuda lawn? If it's got native perennial broadleaves in there, I would use a grass herbicide and kill off. I did that with one of them. I just killed off the grasses and left the broadleaves. If it's nothing good in there, then you take glyphosate and start over with a blank palette. But there are herbicides that'll kill grasses, but not kill wildflowers, not kill broadleaves. And so you just look and see what's there. And then you decide, am I going to cater to the cool season stuff that grows in the winter? Am I going to cater to the warm season stuff that grows in the summer? And if you don't have anything there, then you get to decide which one you're going to do. But you can't have everything. And so it's just like every gardener that calls, I want a plant that, and my wife says the same thing. Well, I want it to bloom all the time. I want it to be evergreen, flowers, fruit, $20 bills in the axils of the leaves. I mean, you can't have everything. And so just like your spouse, did you get everything you wanted with your spouse? Just get something that comes back year after year. That's the best you can hope for. And so remember, it took thousands of years to develop, and so you're not going to recreate it like an instant garden in 1 year. But if you know what you're doing and you're patient, it'll happen. And so a couple of things you need to know about it. Something that's called matrix planting. So nature, in gardening, we plant only the plant we like. We kill off everything else. We use herbicide, we use mulch, and we just want that one plant left. Like, there's 3 or 4 people in here that I like. The rest of you get out of here. And so that's what we do in the gardening world. Nature's not like that. And so in the garden world, we've always told people, plant's weedy, it seeds out, don't plant. That plant's aggressive, it's a thug, it doesn't play well with others. So we've banished all the tough, vigorous plants to just get down to our favorite plant. And then we learn how to mulch and water and primp. Well, that's not the way nature did it. Nature did it by taking the ruderal species, the weedy things that seed out and come up. So if you have a disaster, you have a fire, you have a landslide, something like an Indian blanket pops up everywhere. If you got thuggy stuff, think of like goldenrod and physostegia, like obedient plant. Gardeners just curse those plants. Oh, they're thugs, they take over. They're supposed to be thugs, because then you put those in with the stress tolerator species, things like bulbs and yuccas and cactus and all that sort of stuff. So nature was all three of those. And I knew this early in my career, and I was doing something in perennial borders like that, but I didn't really realize that nature is who invented that. It puts all that stuff together, jammed tight, weedy, aggressive, never die, and then depending on the year, it just kind of, a thug can't go anywhere if it's packed in with other thugs, and if you got weeds that are actually flowers that fill in when you do have a disaster, that's the way it's supposed to work. And so you're not supposed to have bare ground, you're not supposed to be mulching, you're not supposed to be cultivating around this stuff. You're supposed to jam it tight with everything, plants that don't die, that are adapted to that area, and it shifts a little each year, too dry, too wet, too cold, something happens. All of those things have to be there, and that's the only way it works if they're all together. So the fact that we literally banned, 2 of the 3, it doesn't work anymore. And so you got a fake, system where you got an IV hookup trying to keep it alive, and that's the way we garden now. And so you need all 3 of those, and that's what a matrix planting is. You literally have tough stuff, weedy stuff, never die stuff, layers of plants, and they all exist together. Just like a forest, when you have an overstory, a midstory, understory, you got the same thing that happens in a prairie, and we've just totally missed it. I only want the one that I want. I want bluebonnets. Well, bluebonnets only grow for part of the year, and so you can't just have one thing, and you can fake it, but the second you're hit by a bus, it's going to turn back into a mess, and so you got to find a more permanent solution. So my maintenance regime is no tilling, no fertilizing, no irrigation, no mulch, needs a period, no soil amendments, no pesticides, no primping, no pruning, no pampering. And so all the opposite things that I learned as a gardener, because that's what made you as a gardener. You did all those things until you can't do it anymore, and then you're dead, and then nobody can tell you're ever there, because it's not anything that lasts. And I cut, mow, or burn it annually 1 time a year at the same time every year until I die, and then hopefully somebody will do it after that, or at least flip a match that way or something. And so totally opposite of what we're taught in gardening. But if you do it right, that will work better than the best garden. So gardens, as Aaron pointed out, that I couldn't keep a job, so I lived a lot of places and created a lot of gardens, and a lot of them disappeared weeks. And I've studied old gardens, and I had a lot of old gardening friends. So it's amazing how fast a garden can disappear. Well, if you do a natural planting correctly, it may last 2 or 3 generations, even if nobody takes it on. But if you do a good enough job of it and get somebody to tend it, it doesn't take much to keep a prairie or a woodland or a savanna going, but it takes a lot to keep a garden going. Nothing wrong with gardening, and I love gardening, but it's a temporary situation. So some seed sources. First of all, you want to collect locally if you can. Keep your eyes out. Do like me. Every good horticulturist dies in a car wreck because we're looking at the roadside instead of the oncoming traffic. True. I can name you all the examples. And so roundstone native seed in Kentucky if you're in the eastern part of the state. Otherwise, Native American seed in Junction, Texas has lots of good wildflowers for the middle of the state and the western part of the state. Wild Seed Farm has some good stuff, but you got to be careful because there's a lot of non-native European stuff in there too. Needs a period, by the way. Some resources, NRCS, USDA. Of course, they're temporarily furloughed right now, so you might want to wait to call them. Texas A&M Forest Service, Texas Parks and Wildlife Department, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Native Plant Society of Texas, which I'm a lifetime member, the Longleaf Alliance, National Wild Turkey Federation, Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service. They can help not only with things like earth-kind gardening, but also the burning. There were some questions about doing a prescribed fire. Forest Service has lots of information and classes on prescribed fire, also Texas Parks and Wildlife and AgriLife Extension. Southeastern Grasslands Initiative is a cool place in the Southeast. It's teaching everybody in the Southeast that, oh yeah, by the way, y'all were prairies too. You just didn't know it. A friend of mine, Dawn, the Nectar Connector, I used to work with her at SFA Garden. She's a consultant now, teaching people how to promote pollinators and wildflowers. And Dr. Barnes there at SFA, and you can go to his website, meristemhorticulture.com. He does a really cool weekly newsletter, and he does a lot with not only edible plants, but native plants as well. Basically, how to use native plants in an ornamental setting. Matter of fact, that's his one of his flower beds there at his house, using nothing but East Texas natives. Okay, here's the issue. We got 800 species of birds in Texas. I mean, what's that? 800 species of birds in the U.S. 600 plus species of birds in Texas. 4,000 plus native species of bees in the U.S., 700 plus species of butterflies in the U.S., 11,000 species of moths in the U.S., 16,000 different species of native plants in the U.S. You can't save them all, but you got to save something. Most people can't name you one native plant. And so you've got to find something and save it. A patch, a pot, a prairie, whatever it is. And it doesn't have to be something pretty. We're bad in horticulture about, I only want to grow the pretty plants. I only want to learn the pretty butterfly. Well, there's a lot of ugly little wildflowers. There's a lot of ugly little skippers and stuff. They all have to have a home, and they're all connected. So if you're saving one thing, you're generally saving a lot of other things as well. And so I'm an overgrown kid, so the Lorax says, unless somebody like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not, and that is true. So I happen to have inherited almost 100 old quilts from grandmothers and grandmothers' grandmothers and that sort of thing. And I've always loved looking at those things to see that they saved sometimes the tiniest little scraps of material. And yet they had a plan to put those together in a little block, and then you put a border and you put a backing on it. And so they made functional things that kept them from freezing to death in their old wooden houses. But they're also beautiful, and it literally tells us what we can do with saving prairie plants. If everybody saves a piece, no matter how big or how small, and everybody goes together, and everybody has a home and a garden, and we make our little blocks, and you tie those blocks together, you won't have the original thing, but you can have some functional system that's all tied together because people got together and made their little quilted block of prairies. And so don't feel bad if you have just a tiny spot, even if you can help somebody else or donate to someplace else or collect seed and give it to somebody else, because we all got to do something. Because, you know, something I've learned in my life, just like me when I thought I just let the forest grow, and it's really true, doing nothing is doing something, and it's generally not the right thing. And so by doing nothing and thinking you're saving something, you're generally not. And so not only do I like to yap, I write a lot. And so if you suffer from insomnia, I do a monthly blog at arborgate.com. I've been writing for Texas Gardener now for a quarter of a century in every issue. And I got a couple of Facebook pages, one called Greg Grant Gardens. But if you're into the Pocket Prairie thing, I've got one called Pines, Pawpaws, and Pocket Prairies. You can follow along what I'm doing in my Pocket Prairies. And then a few books there that I wrote. So that's it for me. Anybody got any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Are you going to be writing a book on prairies?
Question is, am I going to write a book on prairies? Well, unfortunately, now that Greg got married, you know, have to worry about insurance and, you know, cat food coming through the mail and stuff like that. You know, I've got more writing left in me, but I may have to wait till I'm retired. So we're like in the survival mode right now. So, you know, and as I explain to her every week, I spend 3 hours a day driving in the car more, and that's 3 hours a day. I used to be working in the morning and in the evening, and I used to do a lot of stuff. And so anyway, I hope to, and I do love to write. And so however I can get the word out there, we got to do something. Plenty of gardening books out there, but we got a critical issue going on, and we got to find some way to teach people to do something about it. Yes, ma'am. Sorry.
Earlier, you were showing a picture of the two different sides, and like you said, you have some flowers that you have blooming in the spring.
Yeah, that's the same pocket prairie there, my picnic pocket prairie. So in the front here is mowed in the summer, and the back there is burned in the late winter.
So did you plant specifically different mixes for that?
The question is that if you got a situation where you're going to mow in the summer or mow in the late winter, or burn in the summer, burn in the late winter, do you plant accordingly? There's two options. Either what you have there dictates what you do, or you plant stuff that's there. Or in my case, the area that I mow is my green fire lane and my pathway for safety. So literally, I just let that whatever came back and grew there. So it's just gradually evolved to be spring stuff on one side, summer stuff on the other. But then I have planted stuff. From that point on, once I know what management regime I'm doing, I wouldn't waste time, you know, planting bluebonnets in a place that I'm going to burn, you know, during the winter time. And so from that point on, once you make that decision, you make sure you don't seed anything in there that kind of goes against, because you're just going to waste it.
That makes sense.
But it also is amazing how you start maintaining it like that and all sorts of stuff. Most of my big success stories are not things that I even planted, which is just amazing. So you spend thousands of dollars on seed, and all your pretty stuff you paid nothing for.
So there's a ranch in the north part of Cook County. It's like a 3,000 plus acre ranch.
fire brings greenbrier straight back to the ground, and repeated fire, so greenbrier wants you to never burn, and it grows taller and taller and taller. Every leaf is a solar panel, and then the rhizomes on the smilax will be as big as the bed of a truck. And so, yeah, all my woods that are now getting to be pretty I got scars all over to show you from greenbrier. And so, yeah, fire took all that down. It's a thin-skinned little vine, and of course, deer eat it too. And you can use herbicide, but fire takes it to the ground.
Aren't the tubers, I mean, whatever you call that,
Yep.
not digging deeper than dirt?
And the question is, aren't the tubers, aren't the rhizomes great big? And they are. But over time, if it's burned every year, leaves are solar panels, it starves and starves, and eventually starves to death. By the way, I love your accent, because my wife would say, "What's she saying? What's she saying?" Because she goes to Walmart and she can't do Boomhauer, Ebonics, she can't do Tex-Mex. I'm like, what'd they say? What'd they say? What'd they say? So I'm constantly interpreting for her. So I love cool accents. So thank you.
What's your thoughts on solarization?
Question is, what are my thoughts on solarization? It's a nifty trick if you got something really specific that you can't control otherwise. Otherwise, I don't like the idea of like nuking even a natural nuking, because you're killing so many things in the soil at the same time. And so even though it's, you might consider it for certain weeds, for certain nutsedge, for certain nematodes, things like that, to be honest, I've never done it in my life and won't. And so even though I'm not going to get onto somebody that does it, and if they got a good reason for doing it, but it's not something I use. Anybody else? Oh, question about king ranch blue stem. That's a vicious weed all over Texas, even into East Texas, particularly Smith County. Not so bad in far East Texas, but that's it's a warm season weed. It turns out that growing season burns do a better job controlling it than warm season grasses, particularly perennials. When you burn off the dead vegetation, it just sort of makes them happy. But that's an example where burning, herbicide, there are a lot of things that we're just stuck with. And so well, the question is, will mowing get rid of it? Not really. And so it actually adapts pretty well to mowing. So the whole street next to my building, I get to see mowed every couple of weeks, and it's as thick a king ranch blue stem as you'll ever see. But mostly burning. But here again, there are grass herbicides, and sometimes you literally have to start over. But it's a prime example of Pandora's box. The future will be far different from the past, because there's so many things that are here that didn't exist then. And so you think about pigs, and my dad has trapped 600 pigs, my brother 400 pigs. I don't shoot, I'm not a hunter, but I don't mind shooting a pig. But it's like thinking I'm going to control fire ants by picking them up with a pair of tweezers and flushing them down the toilet. And so there are things like that. And of course, we got rid of them because we got rid of mountain lions and jaguars and our three big cats, because they were eating people's pigs. And so every time we make a decision like that, we think we're making something better. There's usually consequences that last forever and ever. And so, yeah, the future world will be different. So we're mostly managing. Every property has to be managed now. You can't just turn something loose and say it's going to grow up into Garden of Eden, because it doesn't work like that. Yes, ma'am.
We have a wildlife exemption, and we were told that we needed to plant all these wildflowers as requirements. And we have spent hundreds of dollars on wildflower seeds, and we haven't been very successful. And now the hogs have eaten some of the, dug all of it up, and so you can hardly make it out there. But do you have any, I know burning is one.
The question is, they've got a wildlife tax valuation on the property, and she's been spending lots of money on wildflower seeds. So Texas Parks and Wildlife is who administers that and has the rules for that. And if I recall, specifically planting wildflower seed is not one of them. So there's going to be stuff about habitat management. So you go to the Texas Parks and Wildlife seed, you'll see the exact requirements. And one of those requirements isn't spending a bunch of money on seed. So there are plenty of other things you can do that will qualify for wildlife tax evaluation, other than spending money on seed and hoping it's going to grow.
The house so, and that's what they told
Well,
us.
look it up online, go to your tax office, and they will show you, and that's not one of them. And
Do you
so,
have any suggestions for,
well, there'll be really specific things, including bird watching, including water, including erosion control, including invasive species management. So the things are not hard to do, and so there will be much cheaper things that you can do without. Of course, pigs are a huge issue. So you know that's other than exclusion. That's I have 3 old houses, 4 1-acre plots of old-fashioned bulbs, and they're all currently rooted up where you can't even walk or drive across them right now. So that's a big issue.
I did have one more question.
Mm-hmm.
I just won a bunch of wildflowers at this, at Ryan High, they have a water garden. And it shows my name, and I won a bunch of wildflower seeds, but unfortunately, they're for another part of the United States. And I'm wondering, would you plant them?
Now, the question is, you got wildflower seed from another part of the country that she won, and people are always giving out wildflower seed, or you win wildflower seed, or you order wildflower seed. If they're from another part of the country, would you plant them here? And I would say no. Now, if you want to plant them in a flower bed, that's an annual flower bed, and watch them grow, but certainly not going to add them to a natural setting or a real pocket prairie. Most of them aren't going to live anyway, but there are some things that can be temporary. But then there are also some of them that are actually invasive things, and so I wouldn't use those. 6-year-old to come up here and tell me how to shut my phone off. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
What time of year do you burn?
Question is, what time of year do you burn? I burn late winter, early spring, all the way up to spring break. So I've been in school so much of my life that you had a week off, but I still take that week off. And the reason I do that is, one, if you're going to cater to monarchs and hummingbirds and the fall blooming species, that allows all that stuff to be in full bloom in the fall. But the bigger reason is I'm by myself most of the time doing burning, volunteer fire departments. Everything else is green as can be. You're not going to burn up a pasture. You're not going to burn up anybody's property. You're not going to burn up a lawn. So everything else is green, including my fire lanes. And so it's a safe time. But if I had a field of Indian paintbrushes and bluebonnets and all these beautiful spring wildflowers, you couldn't do that time. You'd be killing them with the fire. And so if you had that case, you'd want to do a summer mow, because I'm not going to do a summer burn. I tried one growing season burn in my entire life, and a stump got out 3 weeks later, and Greg's fighting a fire all weekend. It was not fun. So I'm back to doing nothing but burning at a time where I can't burn anything except what I won't burn. And if you don't have grasses and pine needles, even in some years it's too wet, and it won't even burn then.
Does burning or mowing in the winter, how does that affect anything that might be hibernating? Or
Question is, how does burning affect things that are hibernating or hunkered down, or eggs and all that sort of stuff? It has some effect, but every bit of research shows that the habitat that you create exponentially increases whatever it is. Now, if you burn every quail nest or every turkey nest or every insect egg forever on the same spot in a small spot, and it was a zoo and that was the only property left, it would be gone. But yeah, by increasing the habitat, all those numbers rebound exponentially and always have. And it's amazing, even things like hawks and pileated woodpeckers will fly up into my smoking woods because they know, there's bugs to be had there. And all the things that evolve with fire, things that go in holes, things that climb trees, things that run away, they all know what to do. So you lose a few things, but the habitat because we basically have habitat now supporting almost nothing. And so the key is we need lots and lots and lots of more habitat. And so sometimes, as horticulturists, we're famous for getting so focused on the tree, they don't realize that the forest burned down 100 years ago. So.
Along those same lines, though, I thought that native bees were nesting in these stems, so these get dead and
The question is about native bees, but you got to look. The percentage being burned now is microscopic compared to, and so there's so many places unburned that the habitat that you create for those same bees that need native bees have to pollinate flowers all growing season long, and we have no flowers all season long. So yeah, you lose a few stems, but on 50 acres, I'm burning probably 5 a year. And so the key is when you have turkey, when you have quail, when you have things like that, you're not burning your entire property. They do what they call patch burning. But once again, we're in a situation now where exponential millions of acres used to burn, and now we're down to hundreds and thousands of acres of burn. And so we just, even though you lose a few things, what you gain is far more. Who else? And this is not my field of expertise. I'm really a flower guy, but I was raised by wolves and born into nature, and first flowers I learned to love were wildflowers, and it just doesn't seem right to go a lifetime and see like, wait, the stuff that inspired me most is disappearing. And I love bugs and birds and bees and butterflies. And as much as I love flowers, if you're going to kill off everything else to have a few pretty flowers, and it ain't right. We did something wrong. So appreciate y'all coming. Sure enjoyed it.